Bad blood between the president and the Fed has led to a cruel summer for one of its governors. Can he fire her? The rank and file warned death by 1,000 cuts means when the next disaster strikes, FEMA might not be ready for it. And yes, 2 is better than 1. We'll discuss the impending nuptials now in the running for wedding of the century. Happy Tuesday, forever and always. This is The Takeout. I'm Ed O'Keefe in for the man, Major Garrett. Call it what you want. There is most definitely an epic legal fight now underway between the President of the United States and the U.S. Federal Reserve. Overnight, the President said he's firing Lisa Cook, a member of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. It's nominated by the President and sets national monetary policy, oversees the 12 Federal Reserve banks, and regulates banks and financial institutions. They're responsible for setting interest rates, and the President, still seething that rates haven't come down yet since he came back to the White House, is doing what he can to drive them down. You might say he wants to drive them down bad. But here's the thing. Given it's designed to be an independent entity, the President can't fire Federal Reserve Board Chairman Jerome Powell or any member of the Board of Governors without cause. So what's the reason for firing Cook? Well, long story short, she allegedly committed mortgage fraud in 2021 before joining the Fed by seeking mortgages on a home in Michigan and a condo in Atlanta and describing both as her primary residence. The accusations have been referred to the Justice Department for possible prosecution. No prosecution underway, as far as we know, just yet. But the President told Cook, given those accusations, I've determined that there is sufficient cause to remove you from your position. She responded today saying the President purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign, she added. So what's the end game? Well, ultimately, a fight in federal court will begin again over whether a big, bold, unprecedented step taken by the President can, in fact, be taken. Let's start tonight with Aaron Navarro, who joins us with more on this. Aaron, describe a little more for the viewers the President's concern and obsession with interest rates and how he's targeted the Fed now over the last several months.
Yeah, over the past couple months, President Trump has believed that the interest rate not being lowered has hampered the numbers we're seeing out of the economy. He often calls the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, quote, too late for not doing it sooner. In regards to Lisa Cook, as you mentioned, it stems from that allegation brought by his ally, Federal Finance Director Bill Pulte, over mortgages that she took out for 2 homes in 2021, and essentially said that she accused Cook of saying that both of those homes are her primary residences in order to get better terms on a bank loan. Trump said that Cook, given her position on the board of an agency that supervises banks and mortgages, as you mentioned, can't have, quote, that kind of infraction or allegation. He said, quote, we need people that are 100% above board. Cook and her attorney have said the move has no legal basis, said they will challenge it in court. And one source says the Federal Reserve has also deferred making any decisions about her status until a court decision is issued, as she has signaled essentially that she's not leaving.
So the chief White House correspondent of CBS News, our colleague Nancy Cortez, asked the President a little while ago about concerns that this is political. Take a look.
Is your administration weaponizing government by digging into the mortgage records of officials you don't like?
No, they're public. I mean, you can find out those records. You can go check out the records yourself. And you should be doing that job, actually. You wouldn't do that because that's not the kind of reporter you are. But you should be doing that job. I shouldn't have to be doing it. If you did your job properly, we wouldn't have problems like Lisa Cook.
So is this about controlling the Fed or not?
Yeah, I'd say it's a big part. Trump said in that cabinet meeting at one point, quote, we'll have a majority very shortly when it comes to the Board of Governors on the Federal Reserve. He said, quote, once we have a majority, housing is going to swing, and noted again that people are paying too high of an interest rate, kind of getting to the main gripe he's had with the Federal Reserve. At one point, he indicated that Stephen Miran, a White House economic advisor that he tapped to replace another governor on the Federal Reserve Board who stepped down, could be potentially switched to fill the role of Cook. So the president is not hiding here that he sees an opportunity to remake the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, which, counting Cook in that vacancy, is still split among party lines, 3-3.
We will see where this goes. Aaron Navarro, thank you for joining us and getting us started here on the Tuesday. We're joined now by Abba Batari and Tom Dupree. Abba's an economics correspondent for the Washington Post. Tom, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. And Tom, for the umpteenth time on this program and across the CBS television network, we ask you this simple question. Can he do this? Is this legal?
The law does allow the president to remove Federal Reserve governors for cause. So Trump does have the right to remove Cook or other governors if he has good cause to do so. I think what remains to be seen is whether or not the allegations so far that have been made against Cook, namely, as was reported, she apparently has designated 2 different locations as her primary residence, whether or not that alleged fraud amounts to good cause to terminate her. That is the question that the federal courts are going to decide, and my best guess is this probably will migrate all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States.
They're going to have a busy few years ahead, yes. And that often is your answer. It ultimately will get to the Supreme Court. We'll get back to you in a second. But Abba, the fact that the Federal Reserve is independent, how important is that independence? And what does this presidential meddling potentially do to upset that?
It is crucially important. I mean, it is absolutely unprecedented for a president to go against a sitting governor in the history of the Federal Reserve. This is something that has never happened before. And the Fed's independence is a very key cornerstone of the economy. The Fed, it gives the Fed cover to do whatever it needs to do in the best interest of the economy, even if it's not politically popular. And sort of meddling with that opens the door to all sorts of issues, all sorts of concerns about the U.S. economy, whether the central bank is continuing to act for the right reasons or not, or whether it's just trying to gain some political brownie points.
Yeah, and it's has a huge effect on the global economy, of course, because the Fed is looked to around the world as a premier central bank.
That's right.
Tom, Lisa Cook has hired Abby Lowell, who is one of those lawyers that gets hired by people who get in trouble in this town. He most famously recently represented Hunter Biden. Does that give us any sense of her legal strategy here?
Well, I think the legal strategy here is going to be that this is a political removal, that this whole thing about mortgage fraud was merely a pretext to allow the president to remake the Federal Reserve Board of Governors in his own image. I think the fact that she's retained Lowell for this shows, number one, that she's bearing into the long haul. I think this is going to be a long, protracted fight. And number two, I think Lowell's not one to pull any punches. I think he's going to confront very directly the question whether the president had the legal authority to do this. So this is a battle that's going to go on for a while. One question that's going to be a preliminary question is what happens while this battle is being waged? Is Lisa Cook allowed to serve as a governor pending the outcome of this? Or is she basically going to be escorted from the office and only allowed back in if she wins? A lot of questions. Some will get sorted out in the next few days, but the ultimate question is probably going to take longer.
Yeah. She works here in Washington, right, Lisa Cook?
That's right.
Do we have any sense if she's been at the office today or in recent days?
I have not heard.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no sign that she's being barred from headquarters at all.
No, not that I know of.
Yeah, now, stock market did okay today, certainly wasn't affected by this. But how could this continued disruption or uncertainty potentially upend the economy?
Well, I mean, it depends. If we start to see the Fed, if Trump gets what he wants, he gets his folks into the Fed and they start lowering interest rates, that could bring down short-term borrowing costs for a lot of people. I mean, that could mean like car loans, student loans, those things, the loans get cheaper. But in the long run, it's not a good thing. We could see a ramp up in inflation. We could see mortgages actually start to get pricier. Mortgage rates could start going up. And so, even if we see this short-term interest rate come down and, the president gets what he wants, that's not what's good for the economy long run.
So long-term potentially adverse, short-term could help those looking for money. Abba Bhattari here in Washington. Tom Dupree, thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. We'll be tracking this one as well as all the other big stories. There, of course, is another big story we've been tracking because it's been a little over 2 weeks since the start of President Trump's crime crackdown here in Washington, and it looks like it's having an impact. Crime in the District of Columbia was already trending down at the beginning of this month, but a new CBS News analysis of D.C.'s crime data shows violent assaults are down 49% compared to the same time last year. Assaults, burglaries, and homicides have all dropped since the start of the takeover of Washington's police. And Scott McFarland's been tracking all of this for us, joins us now. Do these numbers now mean, Scott, that the crackdown is working, can be considered successful?
Feels like an ink blot test when you ask that question, Ed. It's a very politically charged question, even though we're talking about scientific things, numbers and data. The president and his allies have argued that it's unambiguous when you see that precipitous a drop. Assaults down 40%, car theft down 23%, robbery down 63% versus that same period of time last year, that same period of time over the last 5 years, that something has changed, and it can be this federal clampdown that is a direct response to it. But the local leadership here in Washington, D.C., with whom we spent the day today in several different neighborhoods, are arguing the decline was already underway, and the mayor's been arguing this for weeks, that crime is down significantly, and that the one special change, in addition to the deployment of federal agents, Ed, is that there are reports of a steep decline in business at restaurants, at nightclub venues, on the street, versus this time 3 and 4 weeks ago, and that might be part of the decline as well.
You know, the president held a 3-hour, 17-minute cabinet meeting, a bit of an epic run this afternoon, and he spoke at one point about the punishment he'd seek for murderers here in Washington. Take a listen.
Anybody murders something in the Capitol, capital punishment, capital punishment. If somebody kills somebody in the Capitol, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty.
The president, who focuses on branding there, clearly has found yet another nifty set of words there to describe a new policy. But how would that work, since D.C. doesn't have capital punishment?
Well, there's always that big asterisk that sits next to Washington, D.C. when it comes to criminal prosecutions, Ed. The Justice Department handles most of the criminal cases in Washington, D.C. You commit a crime in Topeka, a local prosecutor in Kansas is going to handle your case. You commit a crime in Ithaca, a local prosecutor, a district attorney in New York is going to handle your case. You commit most crimes in Washington, D.C., it is the U.S. Department of Justice behind this, and the Department of Justice has changed its own protocols and regulations to again allow for death penalty cases. And respectfully, the federal death row in Terre Haute, Indiana still functions and has now been put in front of many more federal defendants. That being said, these prosecutions in the District of Columbia do not frequently bring federal murder cases in the U.S. District Court system. That would be a policy change, and one that the president seems to hope is a deterrent towards violent crime.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long this string of no murders continues. It's a good sign. Whether it's because of the federal crackdown or not remains to be seen, but it's certainly something the administration is happy with. And Scott McFarland, thank you for tracking it all for us. We'll talk to you soon. Still to come on the Takeout, nearly 200 current and former FEMA officials warn the Trump administration's left the country less prepared to fight natural disasters. We'll speak with one of them. And we take you to Minneapolis, with the DNCs holding their annual summer meeting. On today's agenda, how the party should handle the war in Gaza. Plus, big changes coming to the House Freedom Caucus, how the far-right group will look very different after the midterms. The Takeout is back in 90 seconds. Welcome back. This week marks 20 years since Hurricane Katrina, storm that killed more than 1,800 people and left communities in ruins. The aftermath, of course, led to changes at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. But in an open letter sent this week to the White House and Congress, nearly 200 current and former FEMA employees are warning the Trump administration has left the agency underprepared to respond to future major natural disasters. It's called the Katrina Declaration and signed by 36 employees, while dozens more chose to remain anonymous. They write, since January 2025, FEMA has been under the leadership of individuals lacking legal qualifications, Senate approval, and the demonstrated background required of a FEMA administrator. They addressed last month's deadly floods in Texas by warning, quote, FEMA's mission to provide critical support was obstructed by leadership who not only questioned the agency's existence, but placed uninformed cost-cutting above serving the American people and the communities our oath compels us to serve. Former FEMA Press Secretary Jeremy Edwards joins me now. He was among those who signed the Katrina Declaration. Very good to see you again. You also worked at the White House at one time.
Good to see you.
Walk us through how FEMA has changed in the last 8 months and what it is that is most concerning to those of you who signed on to this.
Yeah, well, good to be here. And a lot has changed in the last few months. I think the biggest thing is that a lot of the brain power that was in the agency has left through the front door. In recent months, we saw the leader of the National Response Coordination Center walk out. We've seen regional administrators who covered areas in Texas to Georgia and Florida also leave the scene. In total, about 2,000 of the full-time permanent workforce has left the agency. To put that in perspective, there's about 6,000 full-time permanent workforce. So that's about a third of the workforce gone, and dozens of senior level officials. So that to me is very concerning, not just because we're losing good people, but we're losing decades of knowledge and experience of dealing with emergencies and dealing with disasters. I think beyond that as well, the biggest thing that I've also seen is just these increased hurdles being placed in front of the career civil servants who are just trying to do their jobs. You've probably seen reported here and elsewhere that there's now a requirement that every $100,000 needs to get personally approved by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Well, as you might know, a hurricane can cause about $100,000 worth of damage in minutes. So having an agency like FEMA who doles out tens of billions of dollars to help communities recover, that is going to create some roadblocks to them getting that assistance to people in a timely manner.
It's just slowing it down, basically,
Exactly.
because it's all got to go through her, at least in the way it's currently set up.
Yeah.
We're near the peak of hurricane season. Is there a specific concern about the kind of natural disaster that may not be properly responded to by the agency?
I think, well, that's a great question. On the one hand, hurricanes do give us a lot of lead time. We can see them coming in. The flip side of that is they impact a lot of areas. So, you know, like the Texas flooding, while it was a tragic event, and, you know, our thoughts and prayers with all the families who are dealing with that down there, it was a relatively localized event, you know, and impacted a small amount of area. Whereas a hurricane, like we saw with Helene, hits North Carolina, and we had about, I think, over 5 states get emergency declarations for that disaster. On the other hand, you have events like the Maui wildfires, where that is what we would call a no-notice event. It's something that just happens all of a sudden, a fire breaks out. Now we're in a different kind of circumstance. Same with tornadoes, flooding, flash floods, et cetera. So on the one hand, you know, you are concerned about these no-notice events because if the administration is having to do these kind of bureaucratic steps to get funding approved, as we saw in Texas, where it took, I believe, up to 72 hours for urban search and rescue to get to the scene, when it typically takes about 6, that's very concerning. On the other hand, when you have a hurricane impacting 7 to 8 states, and we've seen delays in major disaster declarations, we've seen the personnel leaving, we've seen certain regions without leadership, that also presents its own challenges and concerns.
So you won't be surprised that the Homeland Security Department has responded to this. And in part, they say, quote, "It is not surprising that some of the same bureaucrats who presided over decades of inefficiency are now objecting to reform. Change is always hard. It's especially for those invested in the status quo. But our obligation is to survivors, not to protecting broken systems." Your thoughts?
You know, I think that everyone would agree that there are ways that we can improve FEMA. And there were things that we were doing during the Biden presidency under Administrator Criswell to improve the agency, to get stuff into people's hands faster. For example, they came out with serious needs assistance, which was, instead of having to wait to go through the process of getting approved for funding, you get an automatic check of $750 to help you with serious needs, baby formula, diapers, food, what have you. So there are ways that you can make the assistance come faster, and I think anyone's going to applaud that. Now, what's happening now, I would say, is anything but efficient. Like we've discussed, they're creating intentional roadblocks to slow down the disaster assistance process. Another example we haven't gone over yet, they are now requiring everyone who signs up for FEMA assistance to have an email address. Now, that might sound like a small change, but only about 80% of people apply through the website. The rest of those people are calling in or going to a center to get assistance, and we've already seen stories reported that people have shown up for assistance, we're told they don't have an email address, and we're sent away to go set one up before they can come back and do that. That's also problematic.
Or they have lost their computer and phone in the storm.
They might have lost their phone or computer in a storm, or also, you know, about 20% of people in this country don't even have internet. So the fact that you're making changes like that, to me, doesn't suggest that you are interested in creating efficiencies. To me, it suggests that you either don't know what you're doing, or you are unintentionally or intentionally creating more hurdles for people to get assistance.
Well, look, transitions from one government to the next do create these kinds of disagreements. The concern here, of course, is that you guys are worried that this could lead to really disastrous consequences. May that not happen, but we appreciate you coming in to talk about it. And kudos to your colleagues, current and former, for putting their name on the letter. because we don't hear about that happening too often.
Yeah, and if
it
I
shows
may,
you how serious they are concerned about this.
I would just like to say thank you to my former and current colleagues, many who are still working in that building. There's a lot of risk associated with that, especially when the administration is making them do polygraph tests to show their loyalty to the admin and firing some of them unceremoniously. So I know that took a lot of courage. I just want to say thank you to them who are brave enough to do that.
All righty. Jeremy Edwards, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for coming in. Democrats attempted to coalesce around a response to the war in Gaza while meeting in Minneapolis today, but their efforts seemingly highlighted how divided the party still is over a big issue. We'll explain ahead. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Here's a look at what else we're watching this evening. A federal judge has tossed out a Trump administration lawsuit filed against all 15 federal district court judges in Maryland over their freeze on deportations of migrants challenging their detention. It's a win for immigrant advocates who want to see the legal process play out before those accused of being in the country illegally are removed. The judge who dismissed the case says he did so because it's unlawful and outside the authority of the court. Meta is poised to launch a new California-based super PAC to back state candidates who will promote artificial intelligence and support looser regulations. The company plans to spend tens of millions of dollars ahead of the 2026 elections. AI, of course, has taken the world by storm in recent years, but has come under fire recently over concerns it's addictive, gives minors access to harmful material, and amplifies mental health conditions. Members of the Democratic National Committee clashed over how the party should address the ongoing war in Gaza during their annual summer meeting today. Democrats blocked a resolution calling for an arms embargo and suspension of military aid to Israel. As a result, DNC Chairman Ken Martin withdrew a different measure calling for a ceasefire and the free flow of aid into Gaza.
We need to keep working through this. We have to find a path forward as a party, and we have to stay unified.
Hunter Woodall is following all of this from Minneapolis for us. He tracks politics, used to spend time covering the state of Minnesota, so it's kind of like a homecoming for you. Good to see you, sir. This resolution wasn't successful. They were debating this. Why? And what does this tell us about the fissures in the party as they try to get their act together and unify going into the elections later this fall and next year?
Well, good afternoon, Ed. It was a notable moment today. There had obviously been a lot of tension in the days leading up to this vote and the two competing resolutions being presented. This is an issue that tends to really cause tension in the Democratic Party. It is one where the progressive wing, the more centrist wing, and the very pro-Israel wing of the party tend to be conflicts that really can spill out into the open. This was one of those moments where early on, DNC Chair Ken Martin seemed to flex his power to lead the party when his resolution easily cleared through. That other resolution, though, the one that was part of it, actually, the more controversial one, talked about how they wanted to recognize Palestine as a country, and there were other aspects that obviously alarmed more pro-Israel Democrats. That was voted down, and it was notable that Ken Martin came back and said, okay, they're going to sideline this, they're going to look at finding cohesion within the party. Now, this is an issue that isn't going away, and even before the awful events of October 7th, there was a lot of tension within the Democratic Party between Israel and what's going on in Palestinians. So this issue is not going away anytime soon, and it continues to be unclear how the party faithful, many of whom are gathered here in Minneapolis, are going to find a messaging path that can please both moderates and progressives.
Yeah, tricky issue that has continued to plague them and obviously was a big issue of concern during the elections last year. Real quick, the guys, as they meet, and women as they meet there in Minneapolis, party leaders also have to start thinking about the calendar for 2028. There's renewed focus on who gets to go first, and I know you were calling out the fact that Nevada is making a late play to possibly go first.
That's right, Ed. It was interesting. We're seeing here at these meetings, the early state calendar, nobody knows what it's going to look like yet. We obviously have some ideas based on other years, but Nevada Democrats are making an early push to have their state, their western state, go first on the calendar. This would obviously is an effort to unseat New Hampshire, that eastern state has the first in the nation presidential primary. There'll be a lot of tensions with that. New Hampshire has a state law that essentially means it goes first as a presidential primary state. But Nevada Democrats are starting to make that case. They're saying, look, this is a battleground state. This is a state where you can reach the working class. This is a state where you can try and work on your messaging with Hispanic voters. And there's a lot there that could prevail in their favor, but obviously it's early and there's still a lot of decisions yet to be made amongst Democrats.
We certainly are in the preseason for the next presidential race, but glad we're covering it closely. Hunter Woodall there in Minneapolis tracking it all for us. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. You might say today was a fairy tale for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Details of their newly announced engagement from our own team of Swifties. That's right, CBS has Swifties, lots of them. You'll hear from some coming up next on The Takeout. Is that an invitation? Oh, only in your wildest dreams, but you need to calm down because music superstar Taylor Swift is engaged to professional football player Travis Kelce. The celebrity power couple announced their next era in a social media post shared today with the caption, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Now, here's how CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi reacted to the news of the new romantics just before going on the air a little earlier here on CBS News 24/7.
Taylor Swift is engaged. Taylor Swift is engaged. Come back to me. She just posted it. Oh, it's huge. The ring is ginormous. Break into it. Ah!
Olivia speaks for a lot of Swifties today with those reactions. We'll drop everything now because Jolene Kent and Nancy Cortez are joining me to discuss all this. They are usually CBS News senior business and technology correspondent and CBS News chief White House correspondent, but they are very well known in their respective bureaus to be pretty serious Swifties, both of you. And I can only imagine what's been going through your mind all afternoon as we saw this. Jolene, let's start with you. I mean, I argued it was now in the running for wedding of the century since it hasn't happened yet. There have been some royal weddings. There have been some other celebrity weddings. But this is going to be quite a big deal.
Well, Ed, you know that a lot of hardcore Swifties are wondering not only when this engagement happened, but perhaps are Taylor and Travis already married and not sharing it. We don't have any evidence or reporting on that front, but this is what the Swiftie community is talking about in addition to the ring, how the proposal looked, those beautiful flowers, the arches as Travis Kelce proposed to Taylor Swift. But this is a major moment for so many reasons. The couple obviously got together back in 2023. You've got the world's biggest superstar with perhaps the best tight end in NFL history getting together, announcing their engagement. And yeah, I know, perhaps I said, Ed. But look, this is a major moment in a time when, you know, looking over the past couple of years, it's been a lot of ups and downs in the news cycle and a lot happening in the world. And so many people today blowing up my phone saying, this is the joy I was looking for. Why am I so excited that these people are engaged? I don't even know them, but a lot of people feel that they do. And that's why they broke the internet today. Yeah, they really did. Now, Olivia was, as we saw there on the air earlier, and she was on during this epic 3-hour, 17-minute cabinet meeting that President Trump held today. Nancy, you were in the room on behalf of the White House pool. Someone else did ask him about this, and he had an interesting reaction, did he not?
He did, Ed, but first I want to say that Olivia is a fine reporter, but I have never been prouder of her than I was today. And the composure that she kept in the face of that seismic news that she went on to report to this audience. As you know very well, Ed, the CBS News White House unit is teaming with Swifties, and you've been incredibly patient with us over the years as we dissect every element of her music and her outfits and Travis's outfits and whether they're going to get married and where they get married. And I know it's because you have a couple of Swifties at home as well. But yes, we were in this epic cabinet meeting that lasted for 3 hours, and you could just sort of like look around the room and see that various reporters were being alerted that this engagement had taken place, and they're all doing the mental calculation of, okay, do I throw out this question or that question that I was going to ask and ask about Taylor and Travis instead? And sure enough, it was one of the first questions that the president got. And he hasn't always had nice things to say about Taylor Swift, but he did today. He said that he was happy for them and that he thinks she's great.
Yeah, called him a great football player, called her a great person. So maybe there's a bit of a détente, if you will. And yes, you have all improved my fluency of all things Tay-Tay over the last few years, so I appreciate that. I got to ask you both before we go. Obviously, there's going to be huge cultural, economic effects on all this, but for the two of you, your favorite Taylor songs, what is it that keeps you coming back to her? Jolene, go ahead.
Oh, there are so many.
Yeah,
but I guess I'll give you my top three.
Okay.
Mastermind, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, and in honor of today, Love Story.
All right. Nancy?
Okay, those are great calls. Anything from Tortured Poets Department. I'm a huge fan of Cowboy Like Me from Evermore. It's also a Travis favorite, so that's perhaps a clue to why I like it so much. And Hits Different. I'll say Hits Different. That's a great one, too. Anything from the 3 a.m. edition of Midnights is great.
All right. Those are some deep cuts. Well, I suspect there will be bi-coastal multi-subject coverage of this in the coming months, years, who knows how long. So we'll all discuss this again. But thank you both for setting aside the day jobs for just a few moments to talk to us about some very good news. It was encouraging and happy news, which the world certainly needs. So thank you both.
Anytime.
We'll talk to you soon.
For you.
All right. T-Swift forever. This is me trying. Next, the debate that has President Trump and Democrats on the same side. Doesn't happen often. But this time, we're talking about the Cracker Barrel rebrand. Our political panel will weigh in, and we'll explain why. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back. There's been a rare moment of consensus between Republicans and Democrats. The big issue at hand is the rebrand of Cracker Barrel. Yeah, that's right. In case you missed it, the outrage comes after the restaurant chain went from the logo on your left to the logo on your right. Let that set in there. The president said in part today, quote, Cracker Barrel should go back to the old logo, admit a mistake based on customer response. But the Democratic Party weighed in as well, saying they don't like it either. Well, Republican strategist and CBS News political contributor Terry Sullivan's here, as is Kendra Barkov-Lamy. You've worked for Marco Rubio. You've worked for Joe Biden. You've also done crisis communications and corporate work. And you look at this situation and you think what?
Thank you very much. This is good for business for our business. I mean, when companies do this kind of dumb stuff that they shoot themselves in the foot, they need to hire public affairs and public relations professionals. So from that standpoint, selfishly, it's great. But I don't know why they keep doing it. I'm not sure why the old man in the rocking chair was canceled, what he said. But, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, companies have every ability and option to rebrand if they want to rebrand, but you got to read the room first. You got to do the research first. This is not a time to go and do something that's completely different when the online community clearly piles on quickly. We see it across the board with every little thing that happens. Clearly, they did not read the room well enough at all to do this rebrand to begin with.
And I know they issued some clarification last night on social media. It says, look, the menu's still there. The little games with the teas is still there. We've added a few new things to the menu, but otherwise, come on in, everything's fine.
We're still talking about this a week later.
Right.
That is not good for a brand, right? It just not. So
I mean, if they called you up and said, what do we do? What would you tell them? And I realize that's an expensive question to ask both of you, but
revert the logo and stop talking. Yes, I mean, look, they need to put this to bed.
Yeah.
And they need to apologize for screwing up. They need to acknowledge that, hey, we made a mistake. Cracker Barrel is about bringing people together and yada yada yada. And we shouldn't have done this.
Apologize, move on is what I got to say.
All right. Well, again, rare bipartisan agreement on this, which makes you wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You both, though, of course, are watching also this ongoing debate and deployment of whether or not to deploy National Guard troops. Obviously, they're here, 4 figures of them, at least here in Washington. There's talk about them going to Chicago or other cities. As we reported earlier, there is data that's suggesting that while the crime here in D.C. was on the decline, it has continued in the roughly 2 weeks since this started. Congress comes back next week. They're going to get asked about this because at some point he's going to have to go to them after the 30 days and say, I want to keep doing this, or work with me to figure out how we can keep doing this. How do your parties respond, and how do you two assess this?
Well, look, I think that there was and is still a real need in Washington, D.C. to assess the crime. I just don't think the National Guard are the people to be doing it. They're not trained. You have to have a holistic approach to dealing with crime. You have to have after-school programs. You have to have more police. You know, the Department of Justice cut a lot of serious grants for a lot of these programs. This is also on them. It's not a one-size-shoe-fits-all kind of thing. And I think what they're doing is putting the optics of the National Guard in front of Union Station and in front of very picturesque type of places, when the reality is there are some crime-ridden areas that I don't think they're doing anything about.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time you went to Union Station was, but I assure you, with all the homeless people out there and the panhandlers, it is kind of crime-ridden. And it's a lot cleaner and a lot better when you have the National Guard there. And as long as Democrats want to keep talking about how crime's not quite that bad or we don't need to do quite as much, it's only an advantage for Republicans.
What about the idea, though, that this is a community that doesn't, or at least its leadership, doesn't want it? The concept of a community being
the leadership
told
is
by federal...
rather incompetent, and there wouldn't be this problem if they actually arrested criminals and did things about it, like this cashless bail system where they let people just check out of jail and say, oh, we promise to come on back after they've been arrested. They don't pursue people when they've committed crimes. I mean, you can't go to a CVS and buy razors. Not that I've ever tried, but you can't go to a CVS and buy razors without getting someone to unlock the case because the crime is so bad in this city. And it's not just D.C.
Right.
But
that's my point, though. Once it goes potentially beyond Washington to other states, because this is not a state,
right,
that whole concept of state rights gets thrown out because crime is the exception for the conservative
Well, that might
movement?
be a conversation for the ACLU and the Federalist Society, but for the American people who, you know, are witnessing this crime in their city, Chicago, I don't think anybody can argue that Chicago City is not a real crime problem. And if the local, either the city or the state can't handle it, you've got to start to wonder that maybe the federal government does need to step in.
So this has become a challenge for your party.
Yeah,
How do they talk about
I am all for lowering crime rates, and I do believe Washington, D.C. does have a problem. Everybody has a story about, you know, walking down the street and a mugging, a carjacking. I am not discounting that point, but my point is there's ways to work to do it in a responsible way with programs that matter, as opposed to coming in and setting a mandate like a dictator saying we're doing this right this minute. That is my point.
I understand there's bipartisan agreement on something that went on with Zohran Mamdani, the candidate for mayor of New York. Do we have this? I haven't seen it myself, admittedly, but
it's cringeworthy.
Can we play it or show it? It's coming. What's he doing here? He's bench pressing, right?
He's
trying to
bench press,
and he's wearing
35 pounds in a suit.
In a suit,
correct. With help.
And he was mocked by his Democratic and Republican opponents, right? Not something you'd advise. Right?
Yeah. First of all, the campaign staff who allowed this to happen should be fired. I mean, why would you allow your candidate to go out there and do this, especially one who's winning? Like, if it's different, you know what, Cuomo might need to be doing this because he's so far behind that he needs to try this kind of crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. That man just needs to run out the clock.
I think that there is a point of being authentic, and he crossed that line. You got to do what fits. But I do want to know what is up with men wearing suits and jeans to work out in general. RFK is doing it. Like, can you not wear workout stuff and do it in an authentic way?
I do in the rare chances I get to work out, for the record. Terry Sullivan, Kendra Barkov-Lamy. Good to see you both. Good to see that there was bipartisan agreement on at least something today. Encouraging. We'll see if that happens when Congress gets back. And speaking of Congress, even if they retain control of Congress after the midterms, they'll be missing a few influential members. Why the far-right House Freedom Caucus is poised to look a lot different. We'll get into that when the Takeout continues. Welcome back. Although we're more than a year away from the 2026 elections, it's never too early to discuss them here, and it's a virtual certainty that the House Freedom Caucus is going to look quite different in the next Congress, because three of its members, Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, Byron Donalds of Florida, and Ralph Norman of South Carolina, are running for governor in their respective states. And last week, Congressman Chip Roy announced that he's running for Texas Attorney General. Here to dig into what that means is Paul Kane. He is senior congressional correspondent for the Washington Post. And as I tell everyone, he's the man from whom I learned everything I know about Congress, because we used to work together in a much less spacious space up at the Capitol. So it's very good to see you.
Thank you,
and get
Ed.
to talk to you about this on camera. You pointed this out, that so many of them now are getting ambitious and thinking that the Freedom Caucus mentality and style can transcend statewide elections, writing in your article that their campaigns follow months of battles with House Speaker Mike Johnson over policy details in the process for pushing Trump's agenda. Is that what's driving them out of Washington, or do they really see a chance to take this to a bigger stage?
I think it's a combination of both, Ed. I think they have, I think they're all ambitious people, and they think, being governor, you get you get more exposure, you get a chance to actually do stuff. Governors are always doing stuff. State attorneys general get to sue people. They get to prosecute bad guys. You get more attention than you do as a rank and file member of Congress. But it's no secret, they're all very frustrated because they just, I made up a list of all the times they had to fold in the last 6 or 7 months because Mike Johnson eventually gets into a jam. He needs the final 5 or 6 votes to get something passed. And he has a better relationship with Donald Trump than they do. And Donald Trump sides with Mike Johnson, and Trump calls them into the White House and says, fall in line. And now they have done this over and over again, most recently in July on the big bill that covered everything from border security to taxes.
Right.
And they're being mocked. They're being mocked here in Washington as the folding caucus, the House folding caucus.
Yeah.
And I think they want to get out and get back home where they don't have to deal with the federal issues in the same way.
And of those 3, Biggs, Donalds, Norman, maybe Donalds has the surest or the surer bet. The other 2 may not make it out of primaries or those general elections.
Yeah, and now they are all reliant on Trump endorsing.
By the way, yeah.
So they can't buck Trump on any of these bills because they need his endorsement. In Arizona, Trump did something weird and endorsed Biggs and the other conservative running.
Yeah.
There hasn't been an endorsement yet in South Carolina. Ralph Norman's running against Nancy Mace and a couple of other people. Chip Roy has an opponent who is very close to the current Attorney General, State Attorney General Ken Paxton. So they need to be sucking up to Donald Trump, not getting into standoffs with Donald Trump.
Meanwhile, Congress does come back next week. They got a lot to sort out in a short amount of time. How bad is it going to be?
Okay, so they have to fund the government. The last time there was this issue over funding the government, Democrats ended up crumbling and it blew back in their face. There has been very little work that's actually been done on the 12 annual spending bills, which fund the federal agencies.
Yep.
But more than that, they have been sort of in hiding. Very few of these Republicans have done town halls. Very few, if they've done them, they've done the teletown halls. They're sort of pre-selected callers. And now they're going to come back and they have to face the reporters and they have to answer all these different questions about the Epstein files.
Right.
Was that released last week good enough? Hey, what about Intel? The U.S. government is all of a sudden a 10% stakeholder in Intel. That's not very conservative.
Right.
They are going to have to answer for a lot of things, even before we get to the end of the month drama.
Well, Major sends his best and says he wants you back once Congress is here, so we'll have you back to talk real quick in the 20 seconds we have left. Who goes further this year, the Phillies or the Eagles?
Oh, gosh.
As a big Philly sports fan,
I don't trust the Phillies offense. I think we go cold in the playoffs again. So I bet with the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions.
Don't rub it in. Yeah, okay. I'm a Giants fan. That's why I had to put up with this all the time. But not the reason I left him. Obi-Wan Kenobi, thank you for being here. Paul Kane, appreciate it. Is it over now? Yes, as Taylor Swift might say, it's time to go. But stick around because the Daily Report starts right now.